It was a busy time for the Little Western. After Oliver's incident with the mail train, the Fat Controller showed a great interest in the old line, especially after ballast deposits were discovered in the hills. Dom with Douglas delivered these trains for a time, but they were needed elsewhere, so the Fat Controller brought in a new engine to help. Hello there, is this Colin? No, this is Ellsborough West. Colin is the station right before this. You must be the new engine. Yes, I am. I'm Richard. Nice to meet you, Richard. I'm Oliver. I believe you're helping us with our new ballast trains. I am. Is there anything I should know before I leave? Well, ballast trucks are very troublesome, Oliver said, remembering his incident with S.C. Ruffy. So make sure not to let them take advantage of you. Cheers! Thank you, Oliver. I hope to catch up with you later on. You too, Richard. Good luck. Richard picked up his trucks and set on his way, but the trucks were already making a plan.
He's a new engine! He doesn't know the line! Let's get him!
Richard overheard them and gave him a bump. Listen here, we've been told that you've caused trouble. I'm not taking any of your nonsense, the trucks twittered.
Talk to us like that. We'll show him!
The trucks waited until they were on top of a hill to start their tricks.
Hold back! Hold back!
Stop that! Bumped the trucks hard, harder than it should have. The train surged on and Richard became a runaway. Stop! What are you doing?
Paying you out, you silly green thing! On!
They rushed down the line, Richard braking hard. Driver, we have an idea for how to stop. I'm all ears, old boy. We must go into reverse. That's the only way we can slow down in time. Richard, you genius! His driver shut off steam and put on the reverser. His wheels spun and screeched until he was in control of the trucks. Richard and his crew cheered, and the trucks went along in a daze. Soon enough, they arrived at the station, where Donald said to take them on. Oh, you're early. Young trucks give you any trouble? A little, but I soon put a stop to that. Isn't that right? He looked back at the trucks, who stayed silent. Oh, hello, Montague. It's stuck, actually. Oh, so you took to that, huh? No help from you. No, why, I suppose it wouldn't. Well, I'll be off now. Now, what was that about? I don't want to talk about it. Richard the Great Western Engine was in an awkward predicament. He'd seen an engine he hadn't seen since his days on the mainland, and he wasn't sure how to feel. Just then, Oliver arrived. Hello, Richard. You sure went past me in quite the hurry. Oliver, Richard interrupted. Does an engine named Doc work on our line? Yes, he was the first on the line. Why? Oh, dear. I'm not sure if I can work here. Why? I knew him back in Paddington, and it wasn't exactly the prettiest of exits. Really? He never told me about that. Well, I'm not surprised. Well, what happened? Nothing that you need to know. It's not the Great Western way to spread information like that. Oh my days, there you go again. Why can't you let this Great Western way thing go? This is the exact problem you had back on the Great Western. Well, we aren't on the Great Western anymore, are we? I can understand company loyalty, but you and so many others back there took it to such a ridiculous extreme. And causing an accident in a station isn't a ridiculous extreme? And that's what I was trying to apologize for. But you gave me the cold buffer, you stuck-up square piece of shit. Hold on now. Can you please explain what happened? Well, he's just gonna lie about it. So is he. Fine, then. Both of you explain your own points of view. Duck, go first. Alright. Back in the day, I worked as station pilot at the big station for the Great Western Railway, Paddington. I shunted trains for all of the engines and brought empty trucks and coaches away. Richard worked on a branch line nearby. He brought passengers and goods to the station every few days, but every time he saw me, he would harass me, saying that I waddled, and then all of the big engines started calling me Duck. At the time, I wasn't a fan of the nickname. Of course, I grew to like it, but that wasn't the big incident. No, it all happened a few days before I came to Sodor. I was shunting, and Richard brought in a goods train. I took account of all the trucks he brought and moved on. Later that day, I was shunting coaches into the station, when I heard a crash and derailed, bringing the coaches along with me. It was one of his trucks that was over the points, and then I was blamed for it. They said that I was being careless, but there was no way that I could see it. There was no way for me to prove it, but I know he had something to do with it. Are you serious? I left right after I dropped off my train. Richard, please. If you're going to explain your side, explain it calmly. Okay, I'm sorry. Well, as Duck said, I used to work on a branch line up north. I made regular trips to the big station with goods and passengers. The main thing that I was annoyed at is the way he carried himself. Some of the other engines had coined the phrase, the Great Western Way, and he latched onto it. But he only used it when someone wasn't doing something the exact way that he liked it. He often got on me for this. I would shut my train into a siding, but I would either be putting it in too far or too far out, little things like that. But those little things built up, and I soon snapped. Why don't you waddle away, you duck? I said. Some of the other engines laughed, and the nickname stuck. At the time, I could tell that it really got under his paintwork. Anyway, I brought my goods train in on the day that he was talking about. But then another shunter instructed me to leave the train where it was, so I did, and I left. And when I came back, Duck exploded at me, blaming me for an accident I didn't even know happened. And that was the last time I saw him until, well, today. We have some conflicting stories here, don't we? And there doesn't seem to be a way to prove either side without getting another engine that worked at the station at the time. Well, what are we to do? Agree to disagree. You two don't need to like each other, but as long as you can coexist on the same line, then I think we have something to work with here. Do you two think you can work with that? The two engines looked at each other. I suppose I can. I can too. Oliver smiled. Good. Now let's get to work. And with that, they would have to be content, as they moved off to do their work. Richard the Great Western Engine had been working on the island of Sodor for a few weeks now. He wouldn't want to work anywhere else. He works on the Little Western with Duck and Oliver. And while he does get along quite well with Oliver, he and Duck never truly saw eye to eye. While Duck is a hard-working and kind engine, he also can be very strict about how his line is run, which only annoys the laid-back Richard. Richard was always relieved when Oliver was at the top station with him. One evening, Richard returned late to the sheds. Duck was the only other engine there, and he was not happy. A late engine is a tired engine, Richard. If we're going to keep to a timetable, you must be quick and concise. Richard rolled his eyes dramatically. For your information, Doc, I was helping to tidy up the yard. I'll get plenty of rest, so you can relax if that fits into your schedule. And Richard went to sleep, leaving Duck cross and awake all night. The next morning, Duck was still fuming over Richard's remarks. That Richard, breaking my rules. Well, I'll show him. Richard was taking some trucks down the line when he saw Duck coming the other way with his passengers. Slow down, Richard! You're going over the speed limit! Richard only laughed and blew steam at Duck. Duck was furious. But Richard was only going quickly because he was going down the hill on the line. But Duck was so cross that this never crossed his mind. Later that day, Duck was taking a ballast train when he got to the hill. He was still thinking about what Richard had done earlier and wasn't quite paying attention. Wow, Richard. He's too big for his buffers. The rules are in place for a reason. It was then that he realized that he had broken an extremely important one.
Duck is distracted.
If it won't work on Richard, it'll work on him! The trucks roared behind him as they shoved him down the hill. Duck whistled for dear life. He didn't dare see what was ahead. With a loud smash, Duck flew off the line and landed on the beach. Oh dear, he said meekly, accompanied by the sound of cackling trucks. He felt like a very silly engine indeed. When news reached the top station, Richard was horrified. He rushed off quickly to get the breakdown train. Wait, Richard! Oliver shouted. There's no time, Richard replied, as he dashed down the line to rescue Duck. Down at the beach, Duck thought he was going to stay the night with the gulls when he heard a whistle. Richard? He gasped. What are you doing here? What about your train? Why, no, you don't necessarily like me breaking the rules, Richard began. But I didn't think you'd mind me breaking one to save you from sleeping with the fishes. Duck couldn't help but smile as he began to be lifted out of the sea. Duck was sent to the works to get looked over, and when he returned, he apologized to Richard for everything. Duck and Richard are now good friends. They sometimes argue, like good friends do, but they have a respect for each other's ideals when it comes to how they run the line. But both of them know that the rules sometimes need to be bent to help each other out. Excuse me, do we know each other? I'm not sure. When was the last time you were at Barrow? Not recently. Where were you stationed before Barrow? Paddington. Oh, I remember now. You were my replacement when I left for Sodor. Oh, yes. No wonder we didn't recognize each other. We only worked together for what? A month? Seems about right. Say, do you remember Richard at all? I think so. Small green tender engine, right? Why? Well, if you remember, I had an accident right before I left, and I blamed Richard for it. It was because one of his trucks was over the points. Do you know what actually happened? I do. It was my fault, unfortunately. What? Yes. I was shunting that train away, and I bumped it a little too hard. One of the trucks went all the way down the line. Why it was uncoupled is anyone's guess. I'm sorry. No, don't be. It's been so long now. I really must apologize to Richard.